First up on the agenda then is public comment. I have not received any mailed comment, no attendees from the public. I think we'll effectively say we have no public comment. We don't have the minutes from the 19th. Diana had sent them out. I didn't send them because the last sentence of the minutes were incomplete. It's a sentence that stopped in the middle. I thought she'd drop something, and I had, and didn't hear back from her again. So we'll have to postpone on the minutes. Next time we'll do the May 19th minutes as well as the minutes for fall. You'll have the minutes for the special meeting, hopefully, and then hopefully for this meeting as well. So moving right along. The meeting cycle time. This is a revisit of an item. I mentioned after our last special meeting, this is a note to the people who attended that I asked people to reconsider our discussion on moving our meeting cycle from third Thursday at 7:30 to first Thursday at 7. And just to reiterate, I just after the meeting and the following days, it just seemed to me, I guess our thought was maybe we could just try it for a bit, and I just started feeling that wasn't quite maybe the right thing to do. That having the Finance Commission, who may start meeting again in person, and having to wait until they vacate the room, standing out the hall is maybe not the best use of time for each of you and all of you. I had a subsequent conversation with Betsy, and she said when that finance board met in person, they went past the 7 o'clock about 50% of the time, just as a point of reference. The video crew also needs a couple minutes, so I'm just concerned we'd be standing out there more than we'd like. And it's unnecessary, and the risk is we wait and we try it out for some number of months, and we lose the slot. And I think once it's gone, we'd be scrambling again. And while I know that sometimes, Barbara, you're called in to work on Thursdays, it's not a normal thing that you are. And perhaps if we with enough notice before we start that cycle, they'd pay the same ability, or try not to schedule on that day, as they don't try to schedule you on the third Thursday now. So I'd like to just throw it around again and have us spend a couple minutes and in fact, I guess would make a motion that we do, in fact, move this to the first Thursday of the month at 7 to bring it a bit earlier. So I'll make that a motion if anybody would like to second that. Okay, with no second, does not go on the floor, and we'll move on. Let me ask, what's the concern? Just so if we revisit something in the future.
We're just going to keep it on the regular date and time, right? That's what we've decided?
Well, we haven't done anything different, so it will stay on the regular date and time. But my question is, is there something that's preventing it moving it in your minds? It doesn't seem like people are in favor of that.
I mean, if there was room availability, it would be different. I don't
there is room availability. On the first Thursday of the month, this room is available. There is no one in this room before our meeting that would interfere with the start of it, nor after. So it becomes, and we wanted to meet once in a while. We wanted to meet earlier, whoever could in the room on that same day.
So then, when
The
does
purpose,
finance?
excuse me, Kate, let me just say, I mean, the reason we started the discussion was a feeling that it would be nice to start the meetings earlier.
Yes.
So my point was, starting it on the third Thursday a month earlier is bound to run us into conflict with finance, who meets at 6 o'clock on the first Thursday. On the third Thursday, the cycle that we're on now. If we move the cycle to the first Thursday of the month, there's no one in front of us. There's no one that I think even meets at 5. So I think we have a free evening to bring it forward to 7 o'clock and not run into conflict with anyone. So I thought in order to move it to 7, move it early, we have to find a different day. And the first Thursday seemed like, the same day of the week, just the first Thursday of the month rather than the third. And so I thought that's the way to get it to be earlier.
My personal situation is that they will they are amenable to changing the schedule so I can be free on the first Thursday instead of the third Thursday. So
Okay.
I'm
The-
perfectly
the-
happy with it.
Because the schedule is established at the beginning of the year and it's fixed for whatever we put on that schedule, which is the first Thursday of the month, we'd have to
No,
have
the
a
schedule
motion
says
and
the
vote
third Thursday.
to change the schedule. Starting, and we could change it starting, we need 60 days notice, and then it can be changed. We can pick the month. We can say start in September, start in October, just not to change it quickly on people's schedules. But what I got was,
Does anyone have any strong feelings?
I don't have any feelings on it. As long
For
as
me,
it's-
the first Thursday could be New Year's-ish, it could be 4th of July, and it could be my birthday and Memorial. It feels like that's my concern, and I kind of am psychically set on the third Thursday, so don't have an impetus to second it or agree to it, because I think there'll be more conflicts for me, possibly, on that.
yeah. Well, I think as we did this year, I can't maybe address all those points. I can't change your birthday, but I think as we did this year with our March meeting, when we set the schedule for the year, you look ahead, and if it conflicts with New Year's or July 4th, you set a different, you go to the next week, and you just do that ahead of time. And so you're just off the normal, the typical, and as long as it's in that schedule that you set up at the beginning of the year, then it's not a special meeting, which I know is a concern that Paul raised. Let's not have a lot of special meetings. It restricts you a little bit. So it takes a little foresight, look ahead at the calendar. And none of us are ever going to predict our whole year and when we're going to decide to take a vacation and we're not going to be here a week or something happens in our lives. So those holidays can be addressed.
I don't have any particular preference. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter to me.
And Al, you don't seem to have a preference, and so, but it would take, if we would And Kate, I think you wanted to get it earlier.
Yeah, but I mean, the difference between 7 and 7:30 is kind of.
Yeah.
I guess at some point, finance is going to come back though, and even with a half an hour buffer on Thursday, the third Thursdays, it could
Well-
still potentially be a conflict, right?
Well, if we do nothing, we'll be meeting on the third Thursdays at 7:30. And, then they start at 5 and, it's, I don't have a percentage. I don't think they often go to 7:30, though in budget season, it could happen. Usually,
Do they ever go to 7:30?
the-
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why this is worked out, previously, before COVID, before, that 7:30 seemed to be pretty safe. So we can keep it 7:30 or remove it, but I don't know.
I personally like it at 7:30. I kind of like a little time when I get home from work to regroup and.
Yeah, I know you had said that. I mean, there's not, without disadvantage, okay, sounds like we're still not going to move. We'll revisit it again in
Need be.
December. Okay. Let's see. David Lover is not in attendance. He did not send me a recap. I don't think he was at the last Board of Selectmen meeting that I recall.
The one that I
The
said
re-
was,
The regular one. I think then he,
the one they discussed the housing proposal, I think he was
Ye-
at that meeting.
yeah, it was after that.
Okay.
So, okay, but in any case, David's not here, so we will move on. So the next item is the grants workshop that, Sharon, was it you who saw the notice, or was Kate?
Kate.
She was sitting over there that day.
That's right.
Have a
I'll take
geographical
credit for
memory
it
of.
if I sit in the right
of-
place, eh?
Yeah, I much better remember the geographical places than, and so I did attend that grants workshop, and
Oh, great.
Paul, you had asked that we get maybe a report out. I didn't do it last month because of time considerations, but would like to do it tonight. For this, I've prepared some words, and later on I have some other words to talk, just a little more, I think, for the sake of brevity, if I write it down and say it, it probably takes less time. So with your indulgence, I will read this for the most part. And I would say that workshop was much different than I expected. And I'm going to have to remove this so my glasses don't fog and I can actually read it. It was much different. I expected a how to write a grant workshop type of experience, and it wasn't that at all. It was really focused on bringing to and it was sponsored by SCROG, and so it was SCROG trying to begin to educate their member towns how to leverage the SCROG itself and the state to get money from the many newly available federal programs and some of the existing programs. And let me break in here and say I'm not going to go to details on specifics of it tonight. I'm going to take the materials that were presented and I'm going to send them out to everybody, so you'll have a chance to go through it in detail. But I just wanted to give you the broad brush. And what I did, given that there was no one else from Woodbridge there. I think there might have been 20, 25 people from various towns around. I didn't only counted it after the fact, so I may have missed. Maybe I grabbed the email and tried to find out, but no one else from Woodbridge. And since that was the case, I sent a note to Town Hall with the materials and a note. I copied a few people on it, but the people who I thought were placed to be interested, Betsy and Tony Genovese, because they work on grants, and I thought they'd be interested, and a couple of the selectmen. In the email, I put some highlights, and I'm going to read the highlights that I just wrote in the note. So you'll basically know what I wrote, and you'll know what the highlights are. It was sort of a bulleted list, so this might sound a little off, but these are some of the bullets. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity driven by recent U.S. government funding programs. And what I was talking about there is, of course, the amount of money that's flowing over the next 5 years. It's just tremendous amount of money, and we're probably not going to see it again for a long time.
Specifically to protect open space, is that?
No.
Okay.
No, and that's almost, I'm not sure I captured that. I didn't say this in the email, so it's a good point. There is very little about open space, very little. And at the end we'll get to, and you'll see in the material, list of things money can be used for specific grants. And I think there were only 3 open space grants, and at least one of them I recognize as pre-existing to maybe 2 of them. So even little money, new money for open space.
So is this relevant to the Conservation Commission?
Only to the fact that it was the workshop identified, and you wanted me to report out on it. I did want to do that. I think it's of interest, maybe of general interest. There may be more creativity that you, upon hearing and looking at materials, can figure out how we might apply it. Because there's a lot of money for a lot of things. So no one-on-one, well, except for those 3 specific types of grants, no one-on-one applicability directly to open space. So there's a lot of money coming to Connecticut over the next 5 years, much of it for very large infrastructures, but a lot for smaller types of projects as well. The representative from the State Office of Management and Budget presenting at the workshop represented that there is a desire to funnel the monies to the towns as quickly as possible. He made the point explicitly that those towns who ask early and often will be most likely to get the money. The state has formed a team and has an approach to help the Connecticut towns get monies. The objectives of the Infrastructure Act Fund Team, and it will be on page 2 of the BILT presentation built. Doesn't make as much sense out of context without the materials in front of you. The approach is outlined on page 6. It sets up a process with the Regional Council of Governments to help towns and endorse grant applications before they ascend to the federal government. So essentially, they're setting up a process to say, hey, we as the Council of Governments have looked at this project that the town wants to do, and we support it. And then the town will send it in, but it will have the endorsement of the local Regional Council of Governments, and they're hoping that will spur or facilitate the fulfillment of that grant. So that was part of the big message. The state wants Connecticut to get a good amount of money. They're working, one of the ways they're working is through SCROG to do this. And SCROG's going to take an endorsement, and that'll in effect give a Connecticut endorsement, when it goes to the federal government, hopefully monies will come back.
So this federal monies are actually, the states are competing with each other?
Some are competitive, yes.
Interstate?
Is this for like bridges, or is it for dog parks, or is it for baseball diamonds, or is it for
It is, you know,
railroad, you know,
I
sidewalks?
I was a little, I think I left out, you'll see it, let me just put it this way, you'll see it in the materials, Sharon. It's page after page of the types of things you can go, and I didn't write the complete list here, although I put it in the email. I didn't include it in this for some reason. It is sort of very large things, bridges, but it's also, and I'll try to recollect some of it, it could be for electric vehicle charging stations. Could be for electric vehicles for a town.
Okay.
So it runs the gamut, lots and lots of different things.
Well, it sounds like our town government should definitely be aware of this.
And
More than
that's what
us.
I tried to do, is to,
Yep.
you know, at least make them aware. And if we look at it, and as I say, if you look at it, and there are things where ways we can leverage it, and it's in the next 5 years, so it doesn't have to be next week. But I want us, because we were going to try to figure out what grants are available. Well, there's a whole bunch of grants. There's some very specific about open space, or others about open space we'll add, but you know, maybe there's ones we can keep in mind, because we don't know in 5 years what we're going to be trying to do. And you know, could be worth, at least in the back of the mind, knowing that this exists.
What were the ones about open space? Can you tell us a little? Those?
Yeah, no, Paul, I didn't drill the detail.
Okay.
Truthfully, I just saw them there, I recognized the name, and I said, I think that one exists already, but I didn't go to the details. Something's coming up again in the materials I sent it, will you be able to look at that? And there's just a few more bullet items here. There are some grants, and this I thought was very interesting. There are grants available to help with grant planning. So the sense I got from that is that if you're a town and you're trying to write a grant, and you know it's going to take a lot of work to put the grant together, you can ask for a grant to get some monies to maybe hire someone to help you put the grant together.
That sounds interesting.
I mean, that's my conclusion, but which I had never heard of. And I said I knew that the grants are available across a wide array of areas. There are some human services grants, for instance, and things like that. You'll see that. And the last thing I pointed out to them is that and this I think is of specific interest to us and Kate, something you sent me recently. SCROG has constructed a grants opportunities spreadsheet of about 50 available grants of possible interest to towns. And they intend to keep this up. They're going to refresh it.
So can we look at that? Did you look at that website?
I'm going to send it to you.
That website?
It's an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
I assume they were going to post it on their website.
Okay.
They may even say that in the pitch, I forget.
Okay.
But it's we had started down the road of, should we put together a list of grants that we could reach into. So we may have 3 open space grants that they tell us about. And you'll see the format. It's much more extensive than the format that I had sort of cobbled together and said, here's 5, 6 columns maybe. They've got columns like this. I'm not sure all of it's relevant to us, but I'm picturing that we can start with that, and then we can just add our own and keep it to the side. Every time they refresh it, we just take ours and cobble it on, or a different tab or whatever, and then that way they're doing some of that work. So I was happy with that, and as we figure some project that we may be interested in doing, it's a resource we can go to. So that becomes one of the reasons for the update. So you'll see that there, and I think that was about the last item. Yeah, actually, my last bullet is what I just said, so I think it's consistent. So I'll write a note to myself to send out the grant info. Any other questions? All right, and we can visit it briefly next time.
Okay.
If
So
there's
sure.
any more to say on it. And, you know, with that, and just getting a few additions that we know about that are different, maybe we're done with the task of pre-work on the grants that we were gonna do. We can talk about that next time. Okay. Next on our agenda is discussion on subdivisions. And here again, I'm going to read some notes I prepared. I will say that last night the Inland Wetlands Commission met, and they voted 4-1 to approve the Merritt Avenue subdivision. And so that will now go forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do you know who
Commission.
voted for and against?
Four in favor and 1 against.
And who voted against it?
My knowledge of the names
Okay.
is
doesn't matter.
maybe not perfect, but is it Bob?
Oh, Bob?
Is there a Bob?
He's the chairman.
No, it wasn't Bob. That's why I
Okay.
hesitated.
All right,
Sure,
that's all right.
I know, I can picture you sitting on the right-hand side as you looked at the meeting, so probably not far from where I am.
That's right. I just was
And
wondering.
Bob was sitting there, I guess that was Bob. Yeah, my
That's right,
knowledge of the
that's right,
members are
that's
not
right.
complete. So,
Tips, do you
Yep.
know if there were any modifications, or was it as it was presented originally?
I did not, I didn't listen live to the meeting, I replayed it, so I did skip portions, and I did not hear any modifications.
When do we have to provide our input in terms of what land we would like to see set aside as open space?
That time is either past or before Planning and Zoning picks it up.
So we should discuss
I-
that tonight.
Yeah, well, and that's what I
Okay.
have. I know John Paul, I don't know how out of commission he is. I know he was not at the meeting last night, but I'm sure when he returns and is available again, they'll be formally sending it on to TPZ. Now, so I do think we have to act, and so TPZ knows whether we have given our agreement to a certain open space that we're in agreement. And I don't think if we don't act, that they'll be subject to whatever the developer tells them. And, I don't, if we, and I'm going off script here, but if we agree on what the open space is with the developer, we can send a note to
Well, it
TBC.
seems like we should have a discussion right now to see if we all agree.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, we should. So we can send a note over and say we agree. If we don't agree, then there's really not anything to do, in my view. We've already made the request to TBZ we would like them to invoke the statute to have open space.
Well, don't we want to suggest what that property what particular part of the property would be the open space to town planning and zoning?
Well, we can request TBZ consider that there should be open space.
I
And the
think,
discussion of the open space comes between the developer and the TPZ.
I think we should make our opinion known in terms of what space we think would be valuable open space. They can decide not to use it if they don't want to, but I think we should make our opinion known.
Isn't that what we've been discussing and the whole time,
Well,
that we want to
no,
make our opinion known?
what we were trying to do was to come to an agreement with the developer and his agent of what makes sense as open space. Because if you can go to TPZ with an agreement, they can go and say, the Conservation Commission, we've talked about it, and they think this proposal for open space makes sense, then that facilitates, then the TPZ
So was John Paul
would be
gonna,
more likely to, accept that. The TPZ on their own,
I understand. But my question is, was John Paul gonna come to this meeting so that we could further discuss it, so that we
come
could?
to our meeting.
Yeah,
He came last time.
I know, but we didn't come to an agreement about
Well,
it
I mean,
with him.
right, because we came to an end of a discussion. We had asked about 2 different other additional locations. One was in the northeast corner,
Uh-huh.
and that was not favorable to him. Even more unfavorable was any consideration of open space where they have units planned. Okay. And so they are not amenable to that. They're not going to agree.
But isn't it-
Honestly, I think it would be nice if we had come to agreement with John Paul, but he was hired to stick as many houses on that little piece of land as possible and not give us any usable open space. So, it would have been nice to come to agreement, but I think we still should make our view known in terms of what we think would be appropriate open space and useful open space.
I disagree. I think the river is the most valuable natural resources on that parcel, and that because you not only get the river, you get the bank of the river. I think that is usable open space and valuable open space, not because it's usable, because it has the river and its immediate banks. So I think there's no more important to me open space on that property than that
I think-
piece.
Paul, your idea was that they by statute already have to protect that through wetlands, and it's already unusable because
It's
of.
unusable land. That my point all along was it was unusable land, so we could certainly request that. But we're gonna get it anyway. We should request property that has some value to the neighbors in that area. And I think
And
that
to the
would be,
wetland, and to the protection of the land.
and to the protection
So-
of the land. So,
Well,
my view was, just to recap, was that lot 13 and 14 would give us an increased buffer to the wetlands.
Yeah.
It would also provide a barrier or a
Yeah.
buffer area between the neighbors and the development. It would also provide more parking area on the street because there'd be fewer homes. And we also heard when we went down there to do the tour that the people that were right next to where lot 13 is, that their houses were flooded from the small amount of excavation that was already done, and putting even more impervious surfaces there. I mean, I think frankly, my obligation is to hear what the neighbors said and to reflect what what we can ask for in terms of what their interests are. And my personal opinion is we should ask for lot 13 and 14.
It's not in the purview of this commission to ask for specific open space.
No, that's not what Chris, when I went and spoke to Chris Sullivan, she indicated that, my memory is that she indicated that you can ask for the area that you want to have protected.
That was what we discussed the last couple of meetings.
We did ask, and it was rejected.
No, but we haven't asked
It
the
was-
TP&Z, we're just asking the developer. The developer will reject many things, it's TP&Z that makes the decision.
That's right.
I just want to state that I'm in agreement with Tim, that for me, the river and the area that the developer pointed out when we went on the walking tour would be my priority for open space. I think it's a large ask to think that a developer is going to give up 2 lots.
The regulations say that we can ask for open space. They say that it should be representative of the property that's being developed. It also describes that it should be somewhat rectangular. It gives some descriptions of what it should be. It gives a description that the open space should be at least 1 acre. But because this subdivision is so small, asking for more than what I would suggest we ask for would be unreasonable, because we'd be basically taking 1/3 of the entire property as open space. So, I mean, from the description or from the regulations that Tim shared with us, I think asking for a space that's more or less rectangular, or a lot more rectangular than just a little alleyway along the river, would provide some benefit and open space opportunity for the neighbors. And, you know, as a resident of town, I think the most important thing we can do is to be respectful of the other residents in town in terms of what their desires are and concerns. And they were concerned about flooding problems in their homes, and I think that's something that we should be considerate of.
But we're not wetlands, and so I'm assuming that those conversations were vetted through wetlands, because we are not the experts on water and its movement in that property and its impact on building new homes.
I mean, you can say that it's an invalid reason to suggest, but the regulations say that the open space that we identify should be more or less rectangular. It shouldn't be so much longer than it is wide, and this is essentially just an alleyway.
There's a proportion. It doesn't come out to be rectangular, as I remember. Rectangular-like, but it's not, it's a proportion. So they don't want an open space that's just long, and narrow.
Well, that's what this is. This is long,
It's a triangular type of space.
You mean the space along the river?
Yeah, along the river and some land.
Okay, well, why don't we get a bellwether of what we all think, because whatever we do, we can propose a vote and.
I mean, we could ask for both things. I mean, if that's what you'd want to suggest doing, but I think it would be important to offer or to have some open space that the neighbors in that area could find useful.
Well, while no one is going to make any specific use out of the river, except for perhaps fishing, and watching the wildlife that's on the river, the buffer is usable. That can be turned into even a micro park for that neighborhood. So, I disagree with your statement, Paul, that it's not usable at all. I think there is
a micro park, which
I think you could, in the end, you could take that space and make it usable to the neighbors by putting some benches on there, making it a place to go, making it easy to go down and go fishing in that stream. Now that they've removed the dam at Pond Lily, the fish are coming upriver. So there is use to that space. And that could be a nice little place that the immediate neighbors and the greater neighbors in the neighborhood can go to and use.
I think what some people here are indicating, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that the side of the river, shall we say, that Tim is talking about is already going to be, it can't be used by the developers.
Why not?
Because it's flood wetland.
Because it's
and
wet.
because there's a
Well-
retention pond.
There's a,
Yeah, well,
It can't be,
they
the
can't
plan
build,
doesn't.
they
but
can't
Tim,
build
listen,
housing
listen
there.
to me. Right,
I mean, it's
But they could,
literally like
they-
12
no, but
feet
it's
wide.
protected, because you
It's-
can't develop, you can't.
It's not completely protected. It has
Well,
some
the
level of
Conservation
protection, which I'm
Commission
not,
doesn't completely protect it either, because people wanna put benches on it maybe. Protected means nothing is on it, it's just natural raw land. And that's what I think, is that if we had a portion that could be left unscathed, that would be the best part. And I agree with Barbara that the part that's already gonna be left unscathed is the part by the river, because wetlands covers that, and the retention basin, you can't put anything in the retention basin,
But,
they have
you
to
know,
leave that.
the developers, if it's not yielded to the town, the developers might do something with it.
Wait,
The
wait.
the neighbors who abut it can do something.
No, they can't.
They- Well,
They can't, with a swale.
well-
I've been on wetlands, you can't,
well, they can.
you can't interfere
they-
with a swale.
Now,
I mean, with the
how
retention
often do
basin.
people start dumping onto properties that are
Well,
not,
they
that
can do
are
that
not?
on the Conservation Commission land too, if it's a different land. I mean, being
Yes.
Conservation Commission won't keep them from doing that behavior.
If it's town land,
It's our,
and if it's
so then it's
protected
the
as town
town's
land,
responsibility
then
if
the
there's
town
something.
can enforce that. And you can keep,
Well,
you
wetlands
can
can already
keep
enforce
waste
the,
and people from dumping on it close to the riverbank.
wetlands can already enforce that with the retention basin, I think. I mean, that has to be maintained. And my question also, does it become the town's responsibility to maintain it if that's under the Conservation Commission? Or does it stay the responsibility
No.
of the developer?
Well, are you talking about the detention basins?
Yeah, because if we
The
use the.
detention basins are being retained by the developer.
So it's our Conservation Commission, but the
The-
developer will maintain it.
No, the way this would work, the open space that the developer has proposed, that they would write a deed to the town for, conservation would have
I understand.
would not have any part in this, does not include the detention basins. It only includes the river and some amount of the bank of the river, you know, along the lines that they have defined.
Is it 10% or less than 10%?
It is more, John and Paul
more
went
than
through the
10.
numbers last
It's more
time. I
than
don't have them
10%.
with me, and it's more than 10%.
it's more than 10% when you include the square footage or the area of the land that's actually in the river.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
that
yeah,
doesn't-
I know, which
that's-
is a little,
You know,
yeah.
That's beyond a
I-
little.
Yeah, it's beyond a little bit. I think our concern should not be the developer's profits. It should not be our concern. Our concern should be
Protecting land.
protecting the land and being respectful of the neighbors.
And we can protect as much land as we can protect. In the subdivision, it is the TPZ who determines whether or not they will require open space.
So how about if we make a vote and we present the two proposals, and whatever one carries is what we present to TP&Z?
Right, yes, can I interject for a minute? It sounds like that our voice or our vote is not prioritized like inland wetlands. And that if TPZ is making the final decision, because you've already said that Mr. John Paul is not really negating what our decision was from the Conservation Committee, if it's not being prioritized, it seems that we should be talking to TP&Z and trying to influence them. Because otherwise, it just doesn't seem that whatever we're saying, we're making a lot of
Yeah, I think,
sense, that it's not,
I,
they're overriding us.
I think there are, I'm sure many of us who have concerns with the density of that development. But that is outside of our purview. That is,
But Tim, why is that outside our purview?
because
we
that,
can retain, but wait,
it's a privately owned piece of property that a developer is taking and to the TPZ to make sure that it complies with the rules and regulations of the town to develop the property. They've taken it to inland wetlands who have accepted it. And they go to TBZ.
but in
We,
Elderslie,
I talked to Chris, as you have talked to Chris, and Chris was very specific to me. She said, you can request that the TPZ require open space. She said, and it was emphasized, make sure you request it. It's not ours. I was being told, it's not ours.
but can we request what part we want as open space?
We could, I guess, express an opinion of what would be the most valuable open space.
Because I remember when Elderslie was developed, and this is a vague memory, so I might be wrong, but because of the open space, they could not build as many houses as they wanted to. So,
Probably so.
so why is it different? I mean, and I don't quote me on that memory, but why is it different in this situation?
Because they probably, the TPZ probably said we want at least 10%. I don't know anything about it, so I'm just speculating.
But
I'm speculating on a
don't they
reason why
want
it could happen.
10%?
In this case, this developer with this parcel is offering more than 10%. So,
Well,
I just think, just stop there, just the way you describe that and phrase that is, this is what the developer is offering. I care zero about what the developer is offering. I care
Okay.
zero about how much money they make
Then-
on it.
then
I
Paul-
care about conserving the land and respecting the neighbors.
okay.
I think that should be our priority, not what the
We-
developer wants.
Let me.
We don't have a role in this. We don't have an official formal role in this. If we don't want to come to an agreement with the developer, we don't have to. We can do nothing. And we can let TPZ require the 10%. Now, what 10% they give us,
No,
will
we can
be up to
make
them.
a request.
I
We
think
can
we
make
can
a
We can
request.
certainly, we can certainly,
I mean,
Tim,
what
we
was the
can make a
reason
request
of
for
having a couple meetings describing which pieces of the land would make sense in visiting if all we were gonna say is we want 10% of it, and somebody else decide what that 10% is? It's not our
it's
decision,
because-
from what Chris described to us is we don't have any authority to require the 10%. We can request it. I think as part of our request is we should suggest what we think should be set aside for the 10%. That's all I'm saying.
okay.
I understand that we're not in a position to say, you must do that. That was what Chris described to us when she came and explained to us what our authority was versus our, I guess, responsibility.
Yeah.
Our responsibility is to make the request, and I think it's also a responsibility to say what we suggest. If the Town Planning and Zoning Commission decides to do something different from what we request,
Yeah.
it's out of our hands.
We've already requested the open space that they invoke, but, you know, I guess was just, the second point, I guess, is if you can be in agreement with the developer about what the open space should be, it just makes it more of a certainty that TPZ will do what you think is the right, is the right open space, okay? And the reason, well, I don't know, we seem to have gone from, here's an opportunity for open space at this subdivision, through a process that's a lot longer than I thought, or a lot more time than I thought we'd spend on this. And, I thought it was a pretty, in my, I guess I had an opinion that the piece of open space that was most worthwhile was along the river, and the land along the river, and so that would be, and that's what the developers seemed to be willing, so I thought we were headed towards an agreement. Now, we have disagreement.
But
so-
May I ask
and
a question?
now
I mean,
understand, yeah.
I'm basically not understanding, I'm understanding what people are saying, but is it true or isn't it true that if we leave it alone, that the land along the river is going to have to be left alone anyway? It's not going
Well-
to, it's not usable, it's not going to be,
It-
they
it-
won't
it-
be, the developer
Well,
won't be able to do anything with it anyway
I-
because of other regulations. Is that true?
I think it's and I'm going to defer to Sharon mostly on this because I think she has better background than I do on what can or cannot be done within, the area off that river. What I will say is that if we take the agreement, then we know we can have at least certain protection, and we can have, the town will have an interest about what's done in that area. If we don't take that, and either no open space is granted, or different open space, then my statement is that that area, which butts up against a lot of units, there's properties that go out to the edge of that, will be subject to abuse. Just natural, no one really knows where the property line is, so things start getting dumped.
Well, between
Yeah.
this land that John Paul suggested as being open space,
Yep.
there's a retention basin and an overflow area.
Yep.
So
And
those
then-
are not areas that people can do anything with, and the developer is responsible for maintaining both of those
Yeah,
areas.
further along, further towards the Wilbur Cross Parkway, there's
But-
some area.
But,
No, the retention basin is closer to Merritt Avenue, and the overflow area is closer to the parkway.
But some of the land that would be granted as open space goes beyond that.
Very, very, very little.
and,
I don't recall specifically.
I guess, Tim, it being the conserved area, I don't think it changes any of that. We don't add any possibility. Sort of like what Paul's saying, is that it's just because it adds the conservation easement doesn't mean that people, if they dump, will be cleaned up, or if the town people in the houses dump there, that somebody will do something about it. I don't think that adds, I think the developer kills two birds with one stone.
You have the.
Wait, just listen. So
Okay.
I think that that's why it's a very easy give for them, because it's an obvious give, because they can't do anything with it anyway. Our job is to protect as much land as possible. It's a very dense space. I'm not sure I agree with Paul which space should be taken, but I think some of the other open space would be, or some of the other space, it would be well for, it was talked about that it's a corridor for animals and stuff. If that whole area is developed, that also isn't possible
Yeah,
to
well,
get to the river. I mean, if we're really trying to protect it, it would be nice to have animals be able to utilize that, which would be a hunting
Well,
ground and
Yeah,
liquid
and
for them.
I don't think it's just protecting open land. It's all natural resources. And the
Well, no,
river
I mean, the
and
river-
its immediate environs are important.
But
And
wetlands
the
is
animals have a
protecting that.
corridor that
But
runs
they're-
along the Wilbur Cross in the back
Okay.
of that property. So they do have access
Yeah,
to it.
but that's going to be, construction's going to be going on that pretty soon.
Yeah, but that's a temporary. I mean, we know that's a disruption, but it's temporary.
But,
It is.
okay, so our job, in my estimation, is to protect as much land as possible. I think we can do that best by asking for more than what the wetlands is already protecting. So that's where I come out, and if I were to vote, that's how I would vote. I think if we all sort of put our hats in the ring, or whatever the expression is, we can come to a decision, and we can either say, yes, we want to just protect the river, because we want to reinforce that protection, or yes, we want more, and then whatever we decide, we send to TP&Z. I don't think we should keep talking about it. I think
So-
we're pretty clear, and probably everyone has their minds made up.
I think we should come to conclusion on this. I think you
So I
either
propose-
decide that you're, I think the decision is you either decide you're gonna have an agreement or be in agreement with the developer on what they're proposing for open space, or you're not.
No,
That's
that's
the
not the
decision.
agreement. The agreement is that we request what we'd like, and by default, if we don't get that, we'll get the river.
It's not ours to request.
Yes, it is ours
No,
to
We
no,
can
request.
certainly,
Ours, no. We
That
can
is not
request.
what we
that-
understand, Tim.
I was given a specific understanding
From whom?
from Chris Sullivan.
Well, then, let's at least vote for it. If she decides we can't do it,
It's not
Then
up
we-
to her, no.
if she decides,
doesn't
if
have a
she understands the rules. But Tim, I disagree.
There
I
is
think
no
we can
reason why-
request what we want.
No,
Otherwise, we
we
don't
cannot.
even exist.
What do
Yes,
we
we
want?
can.
We just let's can we identify what it is that the thing that we want? Is it what Tim said, like where Tim says he wants lot 13 and 14?
Paul,
Paul, sorry. Paul. Like what is the
or is
what
it what we just want to go along with what the developer? I think those are the two decisions. So I would go with Paul's thing. That would be my vote. Does anyone else want to speak where they come out? You
Paul?
wanna-
So I just
Hold
make
on,
a-
hold on. I want to say this, Paul. I'm going to vote no if it's on lot 13 and 14, but I want you to know why. My feeling is that I don't want Conservation Commission to be trying to subvert Woodbridge's zoning regulations. This is a dense property, but that's what's allowed in our zoning. And so if we're asking, let me finish. If we're asking for something to try and subvert, and we talk about supporting our neighbors, but by subverting our town zoning, that's not supporting our neighbors. So if that's what we're gonna go for, I just want you to know that I am going to vote no.
So to just one point to that is, or a couple points to that is, the zoning regulations allow for 10% of a development, a subdivision to be designated as open space. It also gives other provisions in terms of what the open space set aside should include. And it should be at least an acre in size. It should be no longer than, I think, 2 or 3 times than it is wide. It has a whole bunch of different requirements that frankly this subdivision wouldn't be really able to accommodate because it's so small and it's so dense. So we're in no way, in my opinion, subverting our planning and zoning regulations. We're trying to work within what the planning and zoning regulations require and what the reality of the particular subdivision is. So we can't ask for a minimum of 1 acre of open space because there just isn't that much land there to do it. Also, the regulations require that the open space be representative of the entire piece of property. And the 12-foot wide or 15-foot wide piece of land along the river is not representative of the entire property. So I don't think at all we're trying to and that's not my purpose at all. I carefully read through what the requirements were that Tim had provided, and I'm trying to find an even balance between what our regulations require and the size of this particular piece of land. Our regulations are really geared toward much, much larger subdivisions where there is that much land and you can find a rectangle or a square and it can be at least an acre. So it's not my intention to try to get around the zoning. I'm trying to work within the realities of what this particular piece of land is and what our regulations are calling for.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Tim. Or Paul, sorry.
Paul, that though, what you're looking to do is fine as you as an individual to look to understand how their proposal complies with the zoning regulations. But it is not for this commission to act on that. It's the Planning and Zoning Commission that has to decide if the proposal fits the zoning regulations. It's outside our rails. We should not go there.
Well, we can make the request and they can consider what
We-
our input is. And if they
we-
decide to
we-
not consider our input, then
Why would John Paul have come
You-
to talk to
you-
us if it wasn't? if we
Because he
didn't
was
have any-
trying to come to an agreement, because he knows that if he goes to TP&Z and say, we've proposed this,
But Tim, I
and the
understand
Conservation
that.
Commission agrees with us that this would be valuable open space, then TP&Z, and don't take this the wrong way, they're not interested in open space. I mean, that's not really
But
the
Tim-
heart of what they do. And so if he comes and the developer comes and says, the Conservation Commission says this would be a good piece of open space, then that smooths that process. That's all.
But Tim, if we said we'd rather have this pace because we know the river's already going to be protected, and he said yes, okay, would you then have said, okay, well, that's okay, we'll take that to TP&Z?
It's a theoretical. I don't know what other space they might propose. There's not a lot of other space on that property, but.
But I don't understand,
it-
Tim, are you saying that we cannot make a recommendation? We do not have the authority to make a recommendation, or are you saying
do
we
not
don't have the
believe we do.
authority to?
I do not believe we have the authority to make a recommendation.
that's
We can
silly. The whole
request-
process wouldn't make sense. It just wouldn't make sense
Yeah,
for.
why would we?
Why
us
are
to
we
have-
even involved? if
We don't have to be involved. That's what I've been trying to say. We can do nothing. We started.
We can, but
be-
we can also make a recommendation. Well,
I do
we'll
not,
learn.
it
We
is
can
not.
make a recommendation if we're told we don't have the right to do it. We can learn from that. We can still make it and.
We can make a recommendation. I mean, it's a democracy. We can make public
You,
comment. and-
you are all free to go to TP&Z and express your opinion on which pieces of open space would make sense.
But not as a group.
But this is, I do not, it is
When-
not within the purview of this commission to recommend. We can request that the TPZ, as we have done, that the TPZ invoke the 10%, the regulations on open space, and that we have done.
I think we should make the recommendation you suggested that we've already made, that they invoke the 10% requirement, and then also let them know what our thoughts are in terms of what we think would be the best portion of the land to select is the 10%.
But I don't think we have consensus
What do you think if I call Chris Sullivan and just ask her about this point?
right now.
Yeah,
I think that is not necessary.
but we
If
all
Rick's-
disagree with you.
No,
I don't
I
know
don't
that-
disagree.
I
all
don't,
disagree
we
with me.
don't, all, we disagree that we can't make a recommendation.
Then,
It's whether
then following the meeting, you can give her a call and if you, and
Well, this is a
and
point of
discussion. But it's not
clarification.
appropriate during the meeting, Sharon. It's
I
just
can
not
step
appropriate.
out. It's just that you're telling us we can't do something that we think we can do, and we need to know if we can, because if we can and we don't do it, that's a problem.
What do you want to do?
We want to make a recommendation to TP&Z we want to see who agrees and doesn't agree to create a piece of land that's protected that is different than the piece of land that's already going to be protected by the river.
It's not within our authority to do that.
The
But
process
that's
you're
what we don't
describing,
know.
frankly, doesn't make any sense at all, is that we would have meetings with the developer, and only he could suggest to us what the appropriate land is. We couldn't make a suggestion.
We made suggestions. We made 2 suggestions. You suggested lots 13, 14, if I got that right?
Yes.
And I suggested the upper right corner. And they both were rejected.
But
I
that's
followed
by the
up with John-
developer.
I'm
That's
sorry?
by the developer. The developer is not the authority. It's TP&Z that's
No.
the authority.
No. The developer, the TPC can choose to have the regulations for open space applicable to the subdivision. And then they will work with the developer to make sure that the open space that's designated by the developer fits the regulations.
So,
It's up to, it is up to the developer, I believe, to propose. I mean, it's a discussion until they come with something that fits the regulation. Now, you know, we could agree with what the developer has proposed, and TPZ could look at it and choose to say, well, that doesn't really comply. But I think you saw that John Paul tried to, you know, make sure it had access, and I didn't look to the extent you did, Paul, about whether it met the dimension requirements and so forth. Because I truly think that it's in probably the province of the TPZ to not hold 100% to every, you know, last comma and period in that regulation that they come to given the subdivision and the land, they come to an accommodation that it's a reasonable proposal, and they go forward with accepting it.
To move this forward, is it possible for the group that feels strongly like this to make a motion and for all of us to vote on it? I mean, do we need the chair's permission for them to be able to do that?
The chair will, motions can always be proposed. The chair will rule whether it's an appropriate, I'll say appropriate motion. Some motions aren't appropriate
I don't
for
think
different
that's
reasons.
your authority, is it?
Yes, it is.
Really?
Yes.
So you can decide that whatever we as a group choose, that you don't think we should choose that?
I can decide that if a motion is outside our authority, if it violates town rules and charters, that it's not an acceptable motion, then it won't be brought to a vote.
Really?
Really?
I don't
Doesn't
think that's
sound right.
true. I mean, I don't know. That I think would be something that's really important to figure out if that's real.
Okay. I'll let you
Yeah.
go check that. But I read on it, and that is within the province of the chair.
So we can vote on something and then you can deny that we get to,
You can motion something, and usually best done before a vote. If it's an improper motion, it will not be brought
But
to a vote.
I don't think that's true.
It's not an improper motion if the chair doesn't agree with the motion.
No, it shouldn't be done just because the chair disagrees. I mean, but
Well, that sounds like
And-
what you're saying, basically. You
No,
don't agree with the motion, so therefore you're gonna stop us from voting on it. It doesn't seem right.
Can I say something a little bit different than this? I think I have an issue with the communication process that the committee had suggested two alternatives. Was there a conversation with Mr. Paul? Was it given in writing to Mr. St. Paul? Was it
John
given,
Paul.
John Paul, was that given in writing to John Paul? And did John Paul respond in writing back to the committee so that we could have examined that and reviewed it? We're discussing things that we don't have in front of us. We're assuming that, and I'm not saying that Tim isn't saying anything correct, but we're assuming that there was a meeting with John Paul that rejected two of our proposals. We need to see the correspondence in writing and then discuss it. We're discussing things that we never saw concretely. It should be part of the meeting. We're talking about things that we've not seen yet. Was there a conversation?
There
with-
was a meeting in which he did disagree
There are
with.
minutes that we can take from the meeting, probably.
There was a meeting where he disagreed in writing?
Not in writing.
The
He
last regular
personally-
meeting, Valerie, the last
He was
regular
here.
meeting, John Paul was here, and extensive discussion that was recorded and is available. So
His comment was anything that would reduce the number of houses was no way, or something to that effect.
So should we table this until we get more information and we get clarification
Well,
on?
I think if the Planning and Zoning Commission is gonna vote on it without our input, I think that would be a problem.
they have our input. We would like to have open space in the subdivision.
Yeah, but the open space that was proposed is silly, is frankly just silly.
Well, they don't have to accept it, and as I said, you know, they will have open meetings in which public comment can be had that,
So part of the open space is in the middle of the river. Does that make
Yeah.
sense to you?
yeah.
I'm not the answer,
I mean-
but it just doesn't make sense. It's land that's never going to be developed. I don't know, I'm not going to repeat myself, but I'd like to make a motion that we recommend lot 13 and 14 as the open space for the Merritt Avenue development.
I'll second that.
And it be given to whom? Who would this be given to?
So, as I understand in the open space regulations, that the developer would give these 2 lots if we, that's what,
No,
Be
I mean,
given
the
to the town.
suggestion, we're going to give the suggestion to the TPZ and not to,
yes, to the
Okay.
town planning and zoning commission,
Okay.
yes. And they can choose not to abide by regulations, or a recommendation rather. As Chris Sullivan said, you know, you can only request, and so that's what we're doing. This is where we're requesting these particular lots as the open space area. They can choose not to do it, and if they do, then that's their prerogative. It's not ours to force them to do anything.
So your motion was to request, Valerie, you're taking the,
but
you want to, but essentially,
Lot 13 and 14.
you're requesting to the TPZ.
Right, yes, I'll start over again. I make a motion that the Conservation Commission suggest or recommend, to recommend to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission that they identify lots 13 and 14 as the open space for the Merritt Avenue development.
Any discussion on that?
I don't know whether this is discussion on this motion or not. I'm not sure. I have a different thought on a recommendation to the TPC. And I don't know whether it would be another motion, a different, well, it can't be another motion because we approved this one, then
Could
it's
be a
approved.
friendly amendment.
Pardon?
Could be a friendly amendment.
An amendment to the motion
Sure.
that that what we ask for is not specifically the 2 lots that you're talking about, but I'd like to see, I'm in agreement with Tim and Karen that the river is the most important thing, but I'd like to see more land along the river. In other words, a wider swath
I don't
than
think
will
it's-
naturally happen because it's a river and wetlands and so forth.
Can I just give you
I'd
guys
like
a
to see-
little update?
Pardon?
I didn't call Christine, but I did text her, and she said you can make a recommendation, but it is not binding to TP&Z.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my understanding.
Yeah,
what she
so that's
told
what my
us.
understanding was too.
So Barbara, just some discussion on that. The constraint is that the overflow area and the retention pond go up to just where we would have the open space. So I'll pass this over to you. So it doesn't look like you can actually make that wider. let's say, remove the retention pond in the overflow
You don't
area.
mind being so close.
No, not at all.
So that would,
If you look at that little dark green strip right along the river, that's the,
Dark green is the part that's already wetlands, so it can't be,
A buffer.
and
But what about
and
the
the
light
light
green?
green
but,
area
but the
is
light green area is,
the retention pond in
but
the
the
overflow
retention
area.
pond's only in one little section. You have more than half of that, the length of the property that is beyond the retention.
The retention pond's at one end and the overflow area is on the other.
Well, it's not at the other end, it's next to the,
Retention pond, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and then nearly half of that length along the river is they show as green with trees, but it's not
John Paul
protected.
explained that as the overflow area.
Pardon?
John Paul described that as the overflow area.
the only part, the overflow
No.
area doesn't cover the extent of the strip of open space. The open space is very narrow by the
This
retention
little
and the overflow,
strip
and then
here, and
widens
what I'm
out.
saying is it should be, the open space should be much, the 10% that we're asking for, or we are recommending, just make it a much wider strip along here. Otherwise, if we leave it alone, or it's left alone, it's only this narrow little area that is, they're forced to leave into open space, and this whole thing is
unprotected.
unprotected completely.
But is that part of what we're
So
protecting?
this is the retention basin here.
Right,
And this is the overflow.
but the
area.
overflow doesn't go take that whole thing, take that whole area.
I believe it does.
I don't think it does, that's my,
Well, can you see it? There's a little, is that a line right there? I can't really see it.
Yeah, there's a line like this is the,
that's the area that is untouchable by anybody.
right, and that's what we're getting. That's what we would be getting.
But this is, so
But
this
what
is-
I'm saying is, would be better to, instead of doing that, which is nigh onto
No,
impossible,
this is that.
is
Right.
that,
That
yes,
opens up
is
that.
to gain more of beside the river, which is extremely important to me, to have, not just have the
But
the
then
flood
they-
area.
And they wouldn't have a retention basin or an
Well, the
overflow
retention
area.
basin is there, but the overflow, I do not believe goes the whole rest of the way. I'm quite sure it doesn't.
So,
That
let
was
me
my
just
understanding
clarify,
of
is
it
this
was.
the whole space that we get as of right now?
No,
Or is it just this
it was
space?
just-
It's just
like
this-
from here over, right?
No, it's this little dark green strip right along. there.
That's
That's
the,
wetlands, so
that's wetlands, so,
That's what we're being offered, is this little strip right along here.
well, that's nowhere near 10% part of the property. Nothing
Well,
to do with
if you-
10% of the
If
property.
you include the river area, the water itself, yeah.
You're getting closer to it. Well, so my thing is that,
So Tim, for clarification, are you understanding that it's just this little strip along, Valerie, maybe you want to see this too?
Tim?
I was going to try to put up the map on the screen.
Okay,
I mean, in the beginning
I'm
part,
searching
it's,
for it now.
because
so-
if it's.
this
but
is retention.
But if it's the section that's got the red, it goes to here and then comes over,
There's
Mhm.
a
right?
house there,
not right here.
yeah, there's a house right there.
That says drainage easement, so.
No, there's no house here. The house you're talking about is over here.
Oh,
That's the house that exists now, this one. There's no house in here at all. This is all still green.
but Tim, maybe we should just, instead of you doing that, can you just see if we're right? Because I don't, this is a good.
I gotta get out my
clarification.
glasses, it's too small for me.
Is this the part that's being saved, just this little strip?
The table, sure.
So this is what our clarification is. Is this the part that,
Does it make any sense? maybe a small here.
I knew I should have brought all my
It,
records.
I keep like 3
It's
pairs
not
in my
this whole
bag.
thing, is
I
it?
got-
you know, my memory on it, and I have to look at they said it's very narrow here. And then, through this for a second. This is too small. And then widens out up here.
I had to upset the apple cart, didn't I?
So,
I think it's good for us to
yeah,
have robust
yeah,
conversation.
this is gonna be a
Robust
fence
debate
line
is okay.
in the back of the property.
No one's gonna break.
A fence?
Yeah, I think that's the fence.
So isn't this all protected by the conservation commission?
No, they were, no, because the town, we had discussions, and the town would not want the responsibility to keep this clean.
Oh,
So there's gonna be, this is, you know, sort
this
of
is
off.
all their responsibility,
Yeah, it's
and
their
this is
responsibilities.
wetlands. So what are we
Yeah.
getting?
Well, you're getting this property down here and then up in here. It widens out up here. So
It does?
that-
I can't see that. I don't see
Yeah,
it.
well,
It doesn't
there-
widen out here?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up on this. Give me just a second.
Do you wanna see this anymore, Robert?
No, and, I mean, just to clarify, so that what he's giving, or what he is offering, put it that way, is from here, he's offering this part, or just this part?
Well, I think that's what Tim's trying to bring up, but it isn't clear to me, but I think it's supposed to be this part.
That's what he's offering, and that's why I'm saying I would prefer,
Sharon and Barbara, at the risk
I
of
think they
blinding
don't
this.
necessarily want to give us that because they want to keep it being responsibility of the developer.
That's right.
the what, did you say?
I don't think TP&Z would want that because they want the retention basin to be the responsibility of the developer.
But I'm not even,
And
the retention
spillway.
basin isn't even in my concept of this.
So
But
the
it's
light,
right
the
there.
light green area is the,
Well, beyond the retention basin, this
But
whole,
that's
like,
also their responsibility as a spillway or as an
as,
overflow.
what?
It's if the retention basin doesn't hold everything, it will spill over to there. So I think the developer's also responsible to maintain that. I don't know that for sure, but.
Well, not developer, but sign that over to the homeowners. Other company keeps sign that over.
This is
the
it.
homeowners association or somebody that would have a responsibility
Right.
to maintain it.
So it's,
But is this
So,
it's that,
I believe the pink is the,
is the 10%.
Yeah.
okay, so the pink area, or what color is that?
Fuchsia.
Fuchsia?
Fuchsia.
I'm not good with my colors, let me get my slider again. Would be the proposal, and you can see the detention basin pretty clearly on this. There's an overflow area that's beyond that.
Where is the overflow area?
Well, it's going to be in here, which is why, excuse me, in here. Something's wrong in this.
So Tim, that looks like it's just about 20 or 30 feet. Is that right?
I do not know.
It can't be many if the river's only 20 feet wide, so it's
You
only
can look
10
at the
feet.
garage. The garage is only 24 feet
So-
wide,
So it's a
and
strip.
it's less than the garage.
And Barbara, to your point, you know, you know, this was not, I guess, you know, Barbara, I think I'm going to change my mind and say, maybe this area is the overflow. This red area, and perhaps that's the overflow.
That's what I understood too. Is the
Yeah, and then, you know, Barbara, could this line go out, you know, over here, maybe?
Do we know if without an open space agreement, does that preclude it from ever having walking trails on it?
It's private property.
So that to me is kind of a big deal, because we had talked about extending the
Yeah,
trail.
I mean, there was always possibility of an easement, but, having ownership of the property is more certain. So,
So that it would become usable passive recreational space,
yeah.
potentially in the future if we have it in
Right,
that area.
it would be part of the well, in theory, become part of our greenway and part of the West River Watershed Coalition Greenway. And we would connect it up to the other side of the Wilbur Cross and then onto our properties, Darling House and those trails. With some roadwalks right now because of the density in the Bradley Road area.
Tim, do we know what the yellow lines are?
No, I don't know this. John Paul sent me this, and I'm sure on a large scale map, if we could look at it, we could see them all defined. But he was going to use this when he came and visited with us, and I had the other map, and I just happened to find out.
Tim, can you scoot the map over to the sections that Paul had mentioned, lot 13 and 14?
I can try. Oops.
Other way.
I think I got to go down. No,
No, just
No.
go to the right.
you're right.
Make it go that way.
Okay.
Yep.
Not one.
Keep going.
Keep
Keep
going.
going.
No, the other way,
The other way.
to the side, to the
The
side.
map. It doesn't seem to go the other more.
Oh,
Paul, are there opportunities for passive recreation in that area?
It's flatland, if you remember when we walked around. You
But-
would have access, which is another important thing the regulation requires, is open space needs to have access for people to get to that property. And the two driveways that would go to lot 13 and 14 would provide people access to go from the street in the development into the open space area.
But does it connect to any of the trails in West Rock Ridge that you're aware of?
No, but it does provide access to the street where you can get into it.
Okay.
Oh, actually, it would connect to that border area along the parkway. There's a buffer line along the parkway that goes back here. And if you're able to see this part of the map up here, which you can see in the smaller version.
Yeah, John Paul only sent me a snippet, so I don't.
This is wetlands here, where it's dotted around here. And this is the parkway. And this is the setback from the parkway. This is the state, I guess, buffer zone for the parkway. And this is where lot 14 is and lot 13. So it's pretty close to these wetlands, and it would provide access to this area along the parkway. This goes up to West Rock up here.
I don't know if we care, but the people in the community really did not want access provided on that greenway,
But
and
does,
thought that would be a place
I
for
think
trash.
it's
and
going to happen
lots of
anyway.
people.
It's not,
um,
I'm just letting you know that.
I heard them when they said
yeah,
that.
no,
I mean,
heard
if
them
we,
too.
but if we take lot 13 and 14 and make that into open space and it connects, and obviously our goal is to increase our greenway and active and passive recreational space, town residents will have access to that too.
Yeah.
So,
So the residents' concerns were mostly the people coming from the drug addicts and crackheads from the motels, the welfare motels that are on the other side of the parkway. They were concerned about those people coming up and robbing their homes, which has happened. And that's what they expressed when we were there, is that they were not excited about having that be an open area. I don't know, because it's more of a police issue than ours. But they were concerned about problems that they had historically where people could come up through that area. Right now, it's open.
is it possible, so, again, I really struggle, and I'm sorry, but the way that you framed it in the beginning about it being about parking and density really kind of sealed it for me with not taking lots away. But if we are as a commission going to put forth a recommendation, can we please add the river section? Can we talk about adding the river section to it as well? So, because
Okay.
I don't think we can,
I'm fine with that.
it's like a unpleasant compromise that I would be making, because I don't like that, but I also don't think that it's responsible of us to not protect that space and ask to protect
And
that space.
TP&Z can decide what they're comfortable, what they can work with, I think. So would you like to modify the proposal?
Does that sound,
I already amended it.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I didn't?
no.
You said.
I thought I said I was amending it.
You had
You have to-
you had
Make a
a
motion.
thought, but you didn't need to.
So it has to be made official, so
Official
do you
and-
wanna?
I thought I said I make an amendment.
I don't
To the
recall that, no. Defer to Valerie on
Paul,
that.
could you clarify what you now are gonna propose for us to vote on?
Sure. It would be lot 13 and 14, and a very narrow strip of land that the developer is proposing. It would be both of those areas, lot 13 and 14, in the area that the developer is proposing. And that would be our recommendation to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission.
That's not what I said.
So, Paul, are you
Oh,
amending?
you want the whole buffers, you want the whole, the area. So I think the problem with that is that we wanna leave that, the town wants to
I'm-
leave that, the responsibility.
I'm not talking about the retention basin at all, but there
You're
is a
talking about the
whole
spillway,
section
the overflow.
next to the,
The overflow.
Is it what was outlined in fuchsia? When I had it up there?
you don't have it up there. It almost, it includes that corner down there.
The red area was the overflow, but there was the overflow basin, and rather there was the retention pond, and then the red dotted line, I think Tim said, was the overflow area, which was just about that full length.
So, Barbara, can I just clarify, understand?
What-
You would like the overflow area to be part of the protected area along, it's also right near the river, but.
Yes, but I don't think, yes, put it that way.
Is that what, but am I understanding you, is that what you'd like?
What what I would like to see is the area that has been proposed by the developer widened so that the whole green, except for the retention basin, is part of,
So that would be the southeast corner. So
the
expanded
southeast corner.
expanded space in the southeast corner.
corner, yes.
So you could.
You
use
see what
that
I'm
language.
talking about in
Yeah,
there?
yeah, no, I see. I'm just, my confusion is, I don't know if they want that, the responsibility of the developer also as an overflow area, or,
Well, the overflow, you know, and we can add, not including the overflow area, to clarify it, because the
Yeah.
town does not want any responsibility for the
Right.
retention basin or the overflow area.
Right, so
There's a
Okay.
maintenance
put it that way,
responsibility.
just say that. I
Whose
mean,
responsibility?
The towns,
You say they don't want
they don't want responsibility.
They
for
want-
the
Who's gonna take on
retention
The developer.
basin or the overflow.
The
So-
developer will not be giving that to the town under their proposal, because the town doesn't want it.
And then who will be taking, the developer, but once he leaves, who's?
The developer is going to keep ownership of the property.
So the only issue I have that is the area between the river.
wait, you interrupted Valerie.
Where, that was written that the developer would maintain ownership of that part?
That
That
statement
portion?
has been made publicly, that the developer will be keeping possession of the property.
And the rationale is that there's maintenance required for that area, and so the town doesn't want to own it. They want to have the developer responsible for maintaining it.
No, I understand that, but practical speaking, so then how, the developer will pass that cost on to the tenant or the rental people, is that what?
Yeah.
I would
Probably,
assume. You know,
probably.
Yeah.
And then eventually, when the properties are sold, there will be an HOA?
I don't know if there's an intention to sell them.
I think we should assume that they're gonna be sold eventually.
It would be an assumption on our part. I don't think we have any facts for that. I don't think we can act on that because we don't.
But that's sort of the purview of TP&Z and the wetlands to deal with that. We don't really, how they maintain it, if they maintain it, whether the town is attentive to them maintaining it, that, we just know that the town definitely doesn't want that land. So if we request it, it's not gonna be given to us because they want the responsibility to stay with the developer or subsequent developers, or subsequent owners.
No, I understand, I
All right.
understand what they're
We need to move on. Can we summarize the motion and perhaps it's time to call it to a vote?
I'm not clear about the portion that Barbara, Barbara modified the motion and
She proposed an amendment.
okay.
Do you want me to show you what I think Barbara's is? So Barbara is saying that whatever isn't the retention basin or the overflow area be included in this area that's already proposed by the developer to protect it.
But how can we identify that on paper? Can you?
Southeast corner.
Oh,
The southeast corner that is not part of either the detention or the overflow area. The maximum amount.
You want to keep
The
this
maximum
map? You guys
amount
can keep this map up.
possible that is not, that does not include the overflow or the,
Barbara. We could
Pardon?
We could phrase it that way so that it's clear that we're not wanting to take over
maximum, right, the maximum amount possible, which is not, that does not include the retention basin or its overflow. Or potential overflow. Assumed overflow, that's what I'm trying to say.
okay. Barbara, to the maximum.
The maximum amount possible that does not include the retention basin or the proposed overflow area. Could overflow the whole thing, you know. So,
I'll second.
That's the-
Do we vote on it now?
I just have a problem with the, normally we go by legal descriptions and if there's like numbers
yeah,
associated
but
with it.
we're just
We're not
recommending
doing-
this to TPs&Z. They take care of the legality of the description.
But just for in terms of identification, they usually have something.
I think we're doing a recommendation that they'll look at. If they have questions, they'll come back to us.
Okay.
This is not a document that's going to go into any legal document in the end.
At least right now.
So Barbara's amendment is
Yeah.
we amend the motion on the table to, and would you read the amendment again, just so we know that we have clarity on what we're voting for?
I'm looking, Barbara said the southeast portion, least amount that does not include the basin,
The retention basin,
the retention
Not the
basin.
least amount, the most amount. It
the,
does basically.
the
as much-
maximum amount that possible, which does not include the retention basin or the proposed overflow. Or
Yeah, let me
possible,
just get that, the maximum amount that does not include the retention basin?
retention basin or proposed overflow area.
Wait, or proposed
Overflow area. And obviously this
overflow area.
starts out as the land next to the river.
I'm going to repeat it, the maximum amount that does not include the retention basin or proposed overflow area, the land next to the river. Is that correct?
Including
It-
lot 13.
Including,
Well, first, we're going to vote on the amendment, unless you want to.
No, that's fine if that's the process, but
Well, yeah, there's a couple ways to get there, but I think we started down the amendment process. So we will vote on the amendment. first, I believe.
Could be a friendly amendment, not to say that's
Excuse
fine.
me?
Could it be a friendly amendment? I
Yeah,
say that's
if-
acceptable.
I think if you want to, you know,
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
add that language to your, then we
Yeah,
can
that's
probably
fine.
do it all at once. So then now we need a reading of the whole.
Should
Paul,
I-
do you wanna-
Should I read it, or?
Yeah.
Barbara, what Barbara just said?
I'd like a reading of the
Entire
motion in entirety before we vote on it, so that all members know exactly what we're voting on.
I can do that if you like.
No, I could, this is the one Barbara just said.
No, well, it's what Paul said and
Oh,
Barbara
okay.
said,
Well,
strung together as one proposal. If you want to, Paul, I think Paul can verbalize it, if you want to just make sure you have that written down.
Well, let me see if I have it right, so that he can correct it. That you recommend that lot 13 and 14, that the Conservation Committee suggest that those areas be open space and next to Merritt Avenue, and we're suggesting that to TP&Z?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sure.
in addition to the amendment.
And then the amendment, Barbara's amendment, the maximum amount that does not include the retention basin or proposed overflow area, which is the land next to the river.
Sure, just to make it more understandable, maybe I could summarize it.
Okay, yep.
Make a motion that the Conservation Commission recommend to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission that lots 13 and 14 and the maximum amount of land between the river and the retention basin and the overflow area, not including the retention basin and the overflow area, be the open space area. That's a little bit of
I
a
second.
word salad, but I think everybody knows
To
what the
the-
intention is.
With the intention that we get the maximum amount in the southeast corner. That's not including the, okay. I'll wordsmith it at the end. Okay,
Okay.
so, Valerie, you finish your notes, we will take a vote on that.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion was called for a vote. All in favor? See 5 votes for. And I will vote no, so 1 vote against. Okay. And we move on.
Pardon me?
Oh,
Sure.
okay.
Thanks.
So before we finish this topic, I have one other item. And I'll keep my editorial comment private for the moment. We have another subdivision coming that has open space possibilities. I know very little about it. It was submitted to Inland Wetlands last night. I was not able to get the plans. Here's what I know. Don't intend to do anything with this tonight other than inform you of it. You can take a note of where it is. It is much different than the Merritt Avenue. It's in a not very well populated place in town. The address is 356 Rimmon Road. That is abuts Ansonia, where Ansonia meets Seymour. So way down the end of Rimmon Road in Woodbridge. If you're familiar with it at all, it's next to the Mice property. This property is owned by Rimmon Road LLC. They're proposing a 3-lot subdivision on 30 acres. If the Chris didn't mistype when she answered my email. The plan calls for 8 acres of open space. There are some other, it's, I believe, adjacent to the Regional Water Authority, but old Birmingham Utility, water utility properties on the Seymour Ansonia side. It is the Nice property, I believe, is land trust property now, and I think there's a town property around it too. So it is near other open space, and so
You're saying it's, are you saying the V between Rimmon and Ansonia?
no, it's further down. It's where Rimmon leaves town.
Almost in Seymour. He's saying
Oh, the
if you go
other
down Rimmon
direction.
Road, almost in
Oh, I thought
Seymour.
you said something about it was, you said Ansonia. I was thinking Ansonia Road. I'm sorry.
No, Ansonia, the town. So the Ansonia,
Woodbridge.
Woodbridge, and Seymour, all
Mm-hmm,
abut. It's very close to there on the left.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
on the left, the
On
property,
the
yeah.
left on the way out.
Yeah, on the way out.
okay.
So you'll see it
I
when
know,
we bring
yeah,
it up. If we had time, I might have, I thought about bringing it up just to show you, but, and then we'll review the plans when they're available, but they're not available. It's just starting the process, so it's nothing we have to rush into. And I don't know that we need to do anything. I'm gonna say that, because it's.
They're already
and
offering
one
it.
of the things they've proposed open space, so, we probably don't even need to request it to TPZ. We may have an opinion on the open space, but we can look at that. I wanted to make a point with this one, though. Just that I think we're going to see a continuing stream of subdivisions. More, we're all relatively new on the Conservation Commission, Sharon maybe being the exception, Kate a little bit more than me, but I think we'll see more subdivision applications because of the recent zoning changes that happened. Recent, now, a year ago. And people will start to think about it, and then they'll start working with their architects, whatever, planners, and they'll be coming along. So I think it would be good if we could move along with our clear cutting ordinance, because all of these are liable to be places where we're going to lose trees as they go. So I look forward to that subcommittee coming back to us and us moving that along as expeditiously as we can, and getting it into the Board of Selectmen. That is a process that will take some time also. So, all right, next item up in the agenda is share comments, and this will almost be the last item. You might have noticed from the email I sent this afternoon that you had time to look at it. Well, maybe you didn't notice. The box site is published on the town website, so people who go to look at the Conservation Commission, the town website, will have a link to our repository. The email I sent this afternoon was merely to put up some of the documents that we're looking at for the Greenway. And my intention would be, as we do, rather than sending emails, and I know emails get burdensome, you lose them, and I lose them, so it's hard to find them sometimes. This will be a place, as we make revisions in this Greenway document, we can just, I'll keep putting the latest one up there if we need a new one, and everybody will know where the latest one is. So that should be in your email box if you haven't seen it from this afternoon. I intend to extend an invitation to Tony Genovese for the next meeting. I have a list of items that you had an opportunity to contribute to, but if there's anything else let me know. Else, I want to send him a heads up so he knows, prepares some things and then is prepared for questions on others. And I expect that will take some time, just because, I think Tony can tell us a lot. I think we'll have a lot of questions for him.
Tim, can I clarify? I just looked, third Wednesday is the 15th. Is that, so we're gonna keep, third Thursday?
Thursday.
Okay, so the first is, the 1st of July is a Thursday, because the next week I'm away, so I just want to clarify that you were talking about the 15th for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
we haven't changed our
Okay.
meeting schedule.
All right.
And
You're saying the 15th and this says the 21st?
it's usually,
Oh, it's the 14th, I'm sorry.
is the third
Oh,
Thursday
oh.
is the 14th? I thought it
Yes,
was the 21st.
I'm sorry, I won't be here for that week. On the 21st.
I believe the
Would-
third Thursday is the 21st.
Yeah, it is. I
21st,
always reading my
right.
calendar
Okay,
incorrectly.
so you're away.
Away.
I know you've been particularly looking forward to having Tony. I mean, there's no urgency to have Tony. If I can't predict who's going to be away in August. It's a big vacation month also. But Sharon, we can defer that for a month.
Well, that would be nice of you, but
Yeah,
I understand
yeah.
that I'm the only one, so.
Yeah, I wrestle with it a little bit, but I know you've expressed interest in that. So I'm happy just to defer that. Amy is out of pocket until after the summer. We may not have anybody. We've lost time tonight for the Greenway, so maybe we'll just do a big work session
That'd be
next
good.
time and make, use the time that way. Because I think we've been clearing a lot of things off, what we need to do, so perhaps that's what we'll do next time. And then the last thing on the minutes taker, I found out from the town hall, the process is they have to find someone, basically. They were a little stuck because of my asking the commission to reconsider the meeting cycle, because you obviously have to tell someone
Yeah.
when it is before they can agree they can do it. So I will go back and let's see, just write myself
Well,
a note
that's
so I don't
good
forget.
news.
So I will tell Betsy the time and the date, the
So
cycle.
this is the last month we have to take our own minutes.
No, they have to find someone.
Okay.
This is the last year.
I don't mean to be so abrupt, Paul. You can do this, but, that they'll find someone right away, but I got the sense that, they're gonna have to work to find someone. So.
And they agreed to it at a meeting, is that what, how did that happen?
I think it's just, a discussion between, Betsy probably and the
Okay.
staff
I
that
just-
says, hey, you'd like to make a few extra
No, I
dollars
understand.
on, once a month on Thursday, third Thursday of the month by taking minutes at the
Okay.
meeting.
There's no requirement for any professionalism or anything, right? It's just somebody who, can take
Well,
minutes?
I would hope they do some type of screening to make
Right,
sure that
right,
somebody.
but it's not-
and that
you don't have
they-
to have a degree
they-
and.
No.
and
Then they give them some, like Betsy gave us some guidelines.
Court
And they have,
recording or something.
they have plenty of minutes to model, so, if
No,
you're lucky, you
okay.
get someone that already does it, and,
Okay.
otherwise we'll have to break them in, right? Okay, that was all I had.
Are we deferring the work
I
session?
really, I'd like to end. So let me not end my comments and say what I think my intention was to review at least a couple. Watch your eyes. I'm going to open this up one more time. My intention was to review a couple of the edits that were done, that you submitted, but we don't have time. so we're not gonna do it. There's one thing I do wanna ask Kate about, so I will do that one. And so I would say that, those of you that didn't get to finish your edits, that we get those ready for next month. Sharon, I may ask you to stick after the meeting for a couple minutes. Just I have a file I'd like to give you, and you'd be able to answer a couple of questions that were from what you had, and then next time we'll go. As I said, maybe we'll have more time. We'll go through, and what I intend will is take what each you submit. We'll look at it, see if we all agree, and then we'll get them finalized section by section. And I've worked on the beginning section. I was going to try to do, as I said, 2, and I was going to review the intro. We'll do it all next time. So let me get Kate.
I thought we
Look
were
at one thing here. I gotta get the right one. This one. Is that, it's a little out of focus, Kate, but is that sort of what you had in mind about
With the map?
the map? I know, I can't get the focus in. You can stand in front of it. I know.
My inclination is to put my reading glasses on and then stand right in front of it.
Is that the type of thing you had in mind?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay.
I'm assuming it has some streets on it, right?
Very few.
Very few?
Yeah, because these are older maps and they just didn't have very many streets. I don't know if I
Wait,
picked,
This was my section.
I think, that, and it's gonna be small, but if the streets were labeled, the streets will be there.
Okay. I
So
think
you're
that's,
saying, what you're asking for is to put a map with each section?
Kate had a suggestion, you weren't at the meeting,
Yeah.
that we were looking at a lot of text and it's hard to think, where am I? And this gives you at least a little reference.
I think
And
that's
so,
great.
in the format,
Yeah,
I was
it's-
playing with different formats and it was a little tricky, but
And that's,
this
yeah,
is
it's
what
better
looked
than the old
best to
one
me.
that
Okay.
had the maps, but it had it after everything, so you.
It is-
you
it
had
I think
to-
that's a good start. I've been going through it this afternoon too, and I know we don't have time to go into this, but looking at the GIS map and looking at the individual lots, it would be almost helpful if we were able to number the lots, at least for our purpose, maybe not the purpose that we provided to somebody who's going to use it to go hiking on, which is so we can identify which are the lots that are part of that section of the trail or
Well,
the greenway.
Are you saying superimpose the GIS on this?
Well, maybe the GIS would be something separate, but just in terms of looking at the map, I looked at the same section several times. I was like, okay, I can see how we get through, and after going through it, I had to go back and figure out which the lots were that I had already identified, and it just seemed like if we're able to number them, we could have, okay, this is 26 Johnson Road, and this is 32 Ansonia Road, and what have you. Those are the ones that make up the
Oh, so on our maps,
Have boundary lines.
use the addresses that we've listed in the text to be on the map.
But identify it on the map, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's-
so
Okay.
we can see.
That's
not-
really-
not a bad idea.
Yep.
That would be helpful, because the
Very
property
helpful.
lines are so weird. If you want to stay on the right property, you almost
Yeah.
have to know where the property
Right.
lines are, so
Yeah.
not to be trespassing, at least in
Like-
this
Well,
section.
you would think, hope the people who laid out the trail did it in a way that you're going
So it's
through
obvious.
proper places,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's obvious.
That's
For
true.
instance,
but-
you had, someone somewhere had mentioned about possibly acquiring lot 91 on Forest Glen Road because it's not, it's an open lot or open wood, shall we say.
Mm.
Well, I drove up there yesterday and a big house on it.
The big house. Yeah. Well,
Take that house down.
obviously,
So,
we can edit that out, right? Okay,
Um,
so end of my comments. Are there any comments around? And
I have a comment. I even emailed it to you today.
I know you did. I'm hoping
I
you
would
bring
like
it up.
to, what?
I'm hoping you would bring it up.
I would like to walk this whole thing. I mean, we'd have to do it in sections, I think. I don't think we could do it all at once, but I think it would be very helpful for us if we could walk the trails.
I think we need to at some point.
And see where the problems are or the needs are, whatever. And obviously, it's not gonna be during a meeting, so.
No.
I don't know, do you have to make a special meeting for that? For us to
Well,
go on a hike?
I think we do it in the other order. We decide we want to go for a walk on a section or two sections, and whenever we decide, I'll just notify of a special meeting, because we'll be together, it's a meeting. Don't worry about the special meeting, that's paperwork. So let's just worry about if we like the idea of walking the sections. And I have two comments on that, Barbara. One is, you know, this is a nice time of year because if you wanted to, and you got bug spray, you can kind of do it after work, and if you pick your sections carefully and get through the sections. A section, you know. And I know most of the sections, so I can have some gauge of how hard and how long, you can tell how long. And my second suggestion is that that perhaps, since each of you have taken responsibility for two sections, that person can be the unofficial guide for that section, coordinator,
I
because
love it.
you've done a little work on the section, and I
And
would.
it won't get us lost.
Well, I mean, I would, you know, I would suggest that you've done the kind of paperwork first, done your research, and then we'll all follow you while you go verify what you're doing. And then that person be the coordinator also and say, hey, let's, how about next Wednesday at whatever time, or next Sunday, you take a walk on this section.
I like it.
I do too.
I like it.
And
I like
I
it.
think if there's any way to share that with the public, I think residents should feel inclined to join us.
Don't you
well,
think we should see it first, so we know what it is? And when we get lost, we haven't gotten 45 people lost?
well, yeah, I
I think 45 is
We know
healthy
they'll-
estimate for people. but-
as I said to Barbara, there'll be public notice, but if you're
Yeah.
thinking of a different distribution, that's fine. I also thought, I had a third thought, that I know much of the trail system is stewarded by the land trust. And so I thought it might be appropriate to invite the land trust person who is assigned to that section to walk it with us, just as an invitation
Then they can
for
be the
them.
guide.
And, well, but they can also look at their section, make sure it's up to snuff, if there's something that, but it's also a chance for us to meet the people on the land trust.
Sure.
So there's a benefit that way.
How many sections total were there? I don't remember.
There were 12.
So can we set a goal of trying to do 2 or at least 1 before our next meeting?
I would hope we'd do more than that. I mean, otherwise it's gonna get into winter and it's gonna be
Yeah.
hard to
So then,
snowplow.
what's a reasonable goal of this in the next month?
I would hope we could do 4 of them.
4?
Two different
one-
times, two sections each time. I don't know whether people can do this after work or, Tim, what do you think that most of the sections as far as length of time is concerned? I mean, those sections are pretty small.
They are, I think a couple hours max.
To do 2 sections?
No, not
To
to
do 1
2.
section?
Yeah, 2 hours at the most. Yeah, and some of them can be done in, well, don't forget, you gotta get back, so if there's parking, we can
That's a good
carpool
idea.
on both ends.
Yes.
We can park on both
Do
ends.
that.
So my first thing was you gotta hike out and hike back. But some of them can be done in 20 minutes. That's what I mean,
I think we should
don't know if I
expect
have a good
everyone to
sense
do
of how
every
much
section.
time.
I think we should maybe just
We shouldn't do
We
every
should-
section?
not necessarily expect everyone to do every section.
Yeah,
Oh, not necessarily
No, right.
expect, but certainly if you
No,
want to,
I-
you can. Well, I mean,
It would be
anybody
if
can
you
do
can.
what they want.
Exactly.
But, you know, there are some harder than
Yeah.
other ones. The ones going up the top of West Rock is
I have
a
to
little
go.
harder.
A little tough, yeah.
Can we call the meeting? Can we shorten this discussion, because I do have to go and I know you
Yeah,
want me to
no,
stay
I
later.
think that was the discussion.
Okay.
Unless there are other,
I like it.
So
think it's a
do we
great
start
idea.
with one?
well, I think you each have two. So
No,
you
no,
can- you
start
can- you
with,
can-
start with number one.
I mean, you can
Yeah.
each start with one.
Start with number one is what I'm saying.
Oh, do you want to do it in order?
It's, I don't, yeah, I don't know, sure.
Well,
Okay, so I make a motion to adjourn?
I second it.
it's
We're adjourned.
non-debatable. We are
Undebatable.
Adjourned
So,
at
Barbara, you can
9:40.
contact us